Hi, welcome to the Gear Garage. My name is Zach, and this is my fun little internet show about whitewater stuff. And today I want to talk about the 2-point self-equalizing anchors for rafting. And what happens sometimes in rafting is we get stuck. We get stuck in a narrow chute, we get stuck on a rock, the boat goes up and wraps up against a rock and is what's called a pin or a wrap. And so we need to get ropes onto rafts to pull them off. And typically, I like to jump around the rope on the raft and try to pull on it without ropes. But unfortunately, we have to add ropes, and that adds danger, so we have to be careful. But typically, what we'll do sometimes is just throw a throw bag over to a raft, clip it onto a D-ring, and then we'll pull. And this is a pretty straightforward system. You know, I'll put 5 or 6 people on this, pulling really hard. I'll try different angles before I start to go to a beefier technique. And once we go to a beefier technique, we have to hook up the 2 D-rings. We don't have to. But if we don't, we should hook up the 2 D-rings. These D-rings could pop off. A lot of them are just glued on. As boats get older, these D-rings get weaker. And if you put heavy forces on the D-rings, they do break. Either the whole thing pops off or just this breaks or something can happen. And it's usually kind of a violent thing when it happens. It's not pretty. So we don't want D-rings to break. And so we want to be able to attach our throw bag or our static line to the D-rings. And we do that with some webbing. This is 1-inch 2-meter webbing. This is pretty much what most people carry in their safety kits for this exact thing. It's great stuff. It's really easy to work with. It's incredibly strong for its size. And we take it, we basically put it through the two D-rings there. We connect it with a water knot. And a water knot is pretty easy, but it's worth practicing. When you're out there with adrenaline going in the cold, you do kind of forget how to do it, or you do it kind of slowly. And a lot of times everybody's watching you, wanting you to hurry up. So being an efficient water knot tire is important. And you just do an overhand knot and follow it back through. And you get this beautiful knot, and you don't want any twists in here because this is attached to the boat. You'll need to untie this later after pulling on it really hard, unless you cut it. But hopefully you don't have to cut it, you can just untie it. And you also want to have leads. You want to have a little bit of lead on each end of this. So, you know, if you just pulled on this, whatever you pull, let's say you pull 100 pounds on this, it puts more stress on the D-ring. So you don't want to pull on this. You want to bring the center in like that, and you want to pull on this, but you also want to put a twist in it right here. And so what that twist does, I'll show you in a minute, but you attach a carabiner to it, and then, oops, I got a carabiner on here. And then you can attach your throw bag, but at this point you're most likely to attach a static line to it because you're going to need to put heavy loads on this. Static lines are way more stiff than throw bags, and so when you pull, you don't lose some of the pull in the stretch of the rope. So I'd highly recommend a static line with the heavy loads, and you just pull on that, and it distributes the load between these 2 D-rings. And when you're pulling on rafts, you want to pull one angle. You can move over here. You'll see it moves nicely. You can pull from this angle. Oh, that doesn't work. Come over here, pull from that angle. And for me, before I like to go to heavier duty mechanical advantage or adding people to pulling, I like to try a lot of different angles first, because one angle typically works magic. So I want to talk really quick about that twist and why we do it. And so we're going to untie some of this here and go back to our water knot. And these things are actually, I weirdly enjoy untying these when they're tight. If you did a good job to begin with, they're a lot of a challenge to untie, but it's kind of a fetish of mine, untying water knots that are super tight, almost like a challenge. So I don't mind it so much. I'm going to put this webbing through a carabiner in this example, just so that we can, oops, I'm doing this wrong, just so that we can see what happens when a D-ring pops. Because I think this is really important to understand. And so again, I'm going to follow this through backwards. Good thing I practice a lot. This is almost second nature for me to tie these things. And so I'll pull the center back through like we talked about earlier. If I don't do the twist and just leave it like this and pull, it equalizes between the 2 D-rings. But if this pops, if this comes out, what happens is the system comes off. What you're pulling comes off. And so this is why you want to put the twist in there. So if you put it back on here, do the twist, and then put the carabiner on, and then put your throw bag or static line or whatever on. You can pull, and then if this comes undone, the system kind of grabs itself still. And this is nice. It's a bummer when you're pulling and everything comes off, because then you have to get the rope back over. It's a big mess. At least the rope is still attached, and there's not a chance of all the stuff firing back to the people that are pulling. So that's the point of the twist. You know, you don't absolutely have to have it, but it's super smart to have it. It's easy to do. It's something that should be a no-brainer. The last thing I want to talk about really quick are angles. And you know, you also want to work on getting this angle smaller. The smaller this angle is, the less force that goes on the D-rings. And again, our goal is to put less force on the D-rings. Let's say we're pulling 100 pounds like this. With a 50-ish degree angle, we're putting about 60 pounds on each one of those. That's a pretty good distribution. That's not bad. 50 degrees should be our maximum angle. We want to decrease this angle as much as we can. And you know, in this example, I'm using 12 feet of webbing and 2 pretty closely spaced D-rings. If you look at your raft or a lot of rafts, most D-rings are further apart. And so if this D-ring was another foot or 2 over, this angle would be a little bit too big. And so you can compensate for that by using bigger webbing. So this is 12 feet. This is what I use for a flip line sometimes. I carry it with me, so it's the minimal thing I need. But in my safety kits, I like to carry 20 foot long webbing. And you know, the beautiful thing about 20 feet is if you need it to be shorter, you can just cut it shorter. So if you need a 12-foot section, you know, go to it. But in this case, if I go through 2 D-rings and do the same thing, tie my water knot, let's see if I can do this pretty quickly and effectively with all my practice. Do my water knot through here, put it into there. Such a beautiful knot. I love this knot so much. Right, and then when I pull it through, do my twist, I'm a bit further away. Now I'm working with about a 30-degree angle. And at a 30-degree angle, if I pull with 100 pounds here, it's kind of like 55 and 55. I mean, the numbers aren't exact. I haven't done the math in my head. But you're putting way less force on the D-rings. And the smaller this angle gets, the smaller the force on those D-rings get. The more it spreads out this 100 pounds into 2, 50 to 60 pounds. Once this angle gets to 90, it gets to be like 70%. So 100 pounds would be 70 on each. And once this angle is 120, the amount you pull is the same on the D-rings as well. So you're basically doing nothing if the angle is 120. And so the nice thing too about this 20-foot length, if I need to go to a D-ring a few feet over, I'll still be in the 40 to 50 degree range, which is acceptable. It helps. This is better than nothing. So again, it's really important to have long pieces of webbing in your safety kit so you can minimize this angle if the D-rings are further apart. So that's pretty much it for self-equalizing anchors, 2-point self-equalizing anchors. One last thing to note for practice is we always practice this from the outside of the boat, right? Like right now I'm on the outside of the boat. I'd be standing in the water. And it's easy to demonstrate and talk about like that, but this is worth practicing from inside your boat. So when you're at home, I would suggest learning on the outside because it's easy. But what typically happens when you get stuck or you wrap is you're in the boat and your friends are on shore and they're the ones that have to send you the throw bag over. So you have to tie this from within your raft, and doing it backwards is a little bit trickier. And so I definitely practice it that way. And the other thing is, this stuff isn't always with you. We carry this in our safety kit, which is on a different raft sometimes. So sometimes you have to send this throw bag over and somehow send this webbing over on that throw bag, which is not an easy task. And so I'd highly suggest that most of you, carry at least a 12-foot version somewhere on your raft. So if you're the one that gets stuck, you can quickly get to it. I used to run this as a flip line around my waist, which I'm not doing now because I'm trying to follow the clean line principle. And so I don't have this in my body anymore. So I'll probably keep this in a little bag in my raft somewhere, have it accessible, so that when I get stuck, I can tie my anchor. Otherwise, again, your friends on shore have to throw you a throw bag, somehow get this over on that throw bag to you so you can tie your anchor. So yeah, that's pretty much it for self-equalizing anchors. A lot of you out there have a lot of experience with this. You probably have things to add, maybe correct some things I talked about. There's a comment section down there below. I'd love to hear it. Any thoughts you had, give me a story about when you used it and when it worked. And there's always, there's a lot of things to do wrong. You can do too many twists, and you can be really doing this really quick and have problems. So those of you that have had experience before where a problem came up, please add a comment. This is a great place to share some of these ideas. And yeah, that's it for this episode. See you next time.